Welcome back, everyone, to the Night Shift. We've got some Deadlock, and it's going to be the 38th edition of the Night Shift. I am Zombie Grub. I am a new face, but happy to be here. Thank you so much to the team for allowing me on to jab about Deadlock with the lovely Jake and ZP here for these matches today. Of course, we got the best of one to start things off, and then a best of three. I know Europe was a little bit shorter, but don't worry. Hopefully, there's going to be a lot of Deadlock to come. So, guys, Jake, especially, how are you doing? I don't think I've ever worked with you, so how's life?
Yeah, I think this is our first time on a show together, but welcome. We're always trying to bring on folks that we think are grinding in the Deadlock space and get a chance here on the Night Shift. So thank you for coming in here and making the time. I'm excited to get to the action. I know, EU cut a little bit short with some roster mania. NA, we've got the full set, full ready for everybody to get into it. Also, ZP, you were in town for your birthday in LA, so we were just hanging out just a couple of days ago, but it's fun to be back on the shift with you.
Yeah, it was a good time. Always good to catch up with people. Some I haven't seen in years. A few of them, it was 7 years or so. It was, the pre-COVID, post-COVID era. Wow. And for those wondering, by the way, some people wondering today, what happened in EU? And honestly, EU does not handle bigger tournaments well. The R1 tournament came, it was a $10,000 tournament, and as is tradition, anytime you have a big tournament in EU, all the EU teams just self-implode, those that didn't get far into the tournament. So hopefully Leviathan will be back next week, but we tried to get Leviathan in, they weren't good to go. Fearless Furies, their new incarnation, just straight up died, and EU just has this cool-down period after a large tournament, but hey, hopefully next week.
And that tournament's probably going to be a point of discussion for the meta we talk about here today once we get into Melee Creeps versus FPS Lounge. But I actually want to talk about something else first. I was watching the VODs last week, and apparently y'all May birthdays. We're all cool. Is that correct? May 5th.
Yep.
So just saying, May is indeed the coolest birthday month. But anyway, so we're going to be getting into Melee Creeps versus FPS Lounge. For those unfamiliar with the Night Shift, you can take a look actually at the format and give a kind of overview as to what we're going to be getting into. So we had a qualifier match that happens off stream, sometimes on stream. I guess CP's around, we can catch a glimpse as to what everyone's doing. But obviously FPS Lounge took a 2-0 over Bird with Clock. And then we go into the NA Challenger match. That's what we're getting into right now. This is going to be a best of one. Whoever wins this then faces the defending champions. That is Floormen, who are actually back-to-back defending champions. They've been doing very well, Jake.
Yeah, I really think this top three in NA is so incredibly competitive. I feel bad for Bird with Clock because it is rough to try to qualify into these three squads, right? Any of these three have shown incredible competition, and it feels like with so many teams at that top level here in NA, they're able to kind of keep pushing the level higher and higher, each pushing each other to go further, to be that one step stronger. So I think this is, for me, the most exciting region right now in Deadlock. For a long time, it was EU, but NA has kind of taken the crown. So I'm really excited to be on this half of the show, guys.
Yeah, and ZP, I know you talk about a bit of the curse that's going on with Melee Creeps. They've not been able to come back and win in a little while. So what are you feeling about today?
Yeah, for Melee Creeps have just been struggling to, get their identity back, where, I think, honestly, it's one part the other teams in NA have really stepped up their game. FPS Lounge came into the scene, quite strong, really good coaching staff and support behind them. Floormen, they pick off D-Mov, they patch some of the holes on their roster, they start playing really well. And, Melee Creeps, look, they were the team to beat for a very, very long period of time. And, when suddenly the competition gets stronger and, patches change at the same moment, things get a little bit tough. You have to find out how to adapt. Now, they may be a little bit more adapting today than they would have liked, because as you look at the roster here, we got Ranger, who's normally their coach, coming in as a sub because EU was over so quickly today that Saya's not off work for another hour. So, for Melee Creeps, are going to be going in a little bit different roster-wise, and, we'll see how they adapt.
And that's pretty painful too. Melee Creeps, they've been struggling a little bit, but Saya was actually, one of the I suppose the draws. This is actually the second week they're going to be coming in with a substitute, right? Because Du also was AFK for a little bit there, but Saya had such an impact on Abrams. Jake, what is the loss here? How are we going to think about this sub coming in and filling such big shoes?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. However, I do think of all the subs to come in, Ranger, is a player with a lot of experience himself. And also in this moment in the meta where, the true support really isn't seeing much play. Asai is a strong player. I don't think he's at all limited in that way. But if you had to pick a meta to be forced to swap out one of your players, then this one doesn't feel too bad, right? Because there's a lot of fighting. Every character, I think, needs to pull their weight, needs to be able to influence not only the laning phase, but some of those early to mid-game team fights, and be able to output their own damage and be a threat in their own right. So I think for Ranger to come in, I'm not too worried about him as a player. I think he's had experience on the night shift, has been a solid competitor. So I don't think this is going to be a huge loss. That being said, it is still Saya, right? It's kind of the heart and soul of this team, makes a lot of comms for the squad. A lot of the leadership and strategy can come from him. So definitely going to be pressure on the rest of melee creeps to kind of step up and fill that gap potentially.
That is really such a neat little, I don't know, thing that we got going on here. The captain coming in, the person making the calls coming in, and how that's actually going to slot in roster-wise, as opposed to maybe, more typical just kind of sub waiting on the bench maybe a little bit more. We got our next team up, though, to show you guys the roster. FPS Lounge. They have been making some waves for sure, but they actually were absent last week, so we're bringing them back on, and we can see their lineup here, ZP.
Yeah, and the big change of note here is that Erebus is gone. Of course, that was a pretty public breakup where they mentioned they're making the roster change. Poppers is in, and Poppers has actually been in around the scene for a very, very long time, going back to all the way into the Fight Night era. Just wasn't on a team for a while, but in general, a way more versatile player than Erebus. It was a roster change made primarily because of hero pool concerns. And look, you look at the results on the Scrimbuck Express. FPS Lounge has been beating everyone. They were beating Floorman in scrims. They were beating melee creeps in scrims. Although the interesting part about that, when you look at the drafts and how all this went down, is that every single time they were playing Victor. FPS Lounge was getting Victor uncontested in all of these games. And there's reasons for that in the draft at the moment, but I kind of look back at this as okay, FPS Lounge is playing really good, but they also have the hero that doesn't seem to lose right now. I mean, even going to EU today, Victor was 2-0, so we'll see how it pans out, but honestly, FPS Lounge coming in with a lot of momentum today.
Yeah, I think so. They've been looking really, really good, dominating qualifier match as well. So they've got some momentum on their side, but melee creeps, they're no slouch. Just because they have a little bit of difficulty actually getting to the championship and winning that doesn't mean that they're going to be an easy walkover. I think we're just going to get right into the draft, by the way. So we missed out on the Mo and Krill duels, which are always fun, but not the most important thing in the world, I suppose.
What is not fun is the source replay system. For anyone who's deeply familiar with it, it's often leaves a little bit to be desired. So sometimes we unfortunately lose our 1v1 replay. But melee creeps versus FPS Lounge. I think you'd have to call FPS Lounge the heavy favorite right now with the last second roster swap. And on top of that, FPS Lounge, to your point, winning a lot in scrims. But melee creeps, despite being first pick, are still going to ban that doorman away. And it's an interesting choice. They could have potentially threatened to take it for themselves with it kind of feeling like a top meta pick right now.
Yeah, definitely a top meta pick. I mean, I think a lot of the discussion was going to be about Doorman, potentially Bebop, and then yes, I think we're also going to have to talk about Victor, because that seems like certainly a go-to, but maybe not first. ZP hasn't been first, but it seems like it's always slotted in there.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think Victor should be rising priority, but you would expect Shiv here based on the scrim data. Instead, okay, they go Mirage. So in the scrims leading up to this, it was always second pick team would ban Doorman, and first pick team would ban either Bebop or Shiv, and then pick the one that isn't picked. FPS Lounge, I think of the two heroes you can expect here, probably Apollo, as Apollo never went beyond this set of picks. And then going forward, okay, you get the Apollo first. Shiv would make the most sense from what we know here, but I actually think for how much FPS Lounge is playing Victor, that I think you slot Victor up a little bit here. I don't think you're taking the worst penalty from getting Victor at this point, although you do wonder why not go something like Shiv Victor. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, Shiv came in. Victor's going to have to wait.
I will say I do like the Mirage opener for a team that has been playing a lot of Victor, because I think this is one of the better carry matchups for Mirage, right? If he goes up against Victor, it's just easy to outplay the reanimation. You can just tornado even if you're in the center of it, right? And just block that instant hit, and just kiting Victor, around, getting full stacks on him. Victor's just not a hero that can come in and out of the fight and peel off those Jin's marks. You pretty much just go all in and full send it when you commit. And that could end up being a liability against Mirage. They also have pockets, so it's going to be a little bit scary to try to full bull rush into these players. I think melee creeps are choosing to maybe let the Victor through and just deal with it rather than try to attack it with picture ban.
It seems like a dangerous strategy considering that it's Victor teams have won all of today and then had some other 100% win records in another tournament. And Victor does come through. So we're going to see if Jake's right. Maybe they've planned around this, or if Victor just ends up being too good regardless, CP.
I mean, the problem with Victor and in the way that he's really valued right now and hard to stop is that Victor doesn't need farm the way he needed in the past. Like, you can have Victor on, more of a gun-centric build, and you don't need to go, okay, we're going to wait till, 40K when Victor is online. You can really have a high impact on the game in the early mid-game, especially pushing walkers, and as a result, you can play Victor and still pick other heroes that otherwise have really high demands on economy. But Melee Creep's going to come in with the Haze Band. There also Viper bans. Not only is Viper becoming a little bit more in the meta, but you're up against Melee Creeps. People are just like, oh yeah, Fishcake has a pretty good Viper. It's kind of one of the aces in the hole that they have, and you take that away. But FPS Lounge, we'll see what they grab here off the break, and yeah, it is going to be Warden. I was about to say is that M1 option's a little bit more limited, especially now that like Venator has seen a big decrease in value relative to no one saw anything. He's seen a bit of a decrease in value relative to the past.
I do think this Warden is a nice matchup into Silver, like that heavy slow, drop the trap on her. She can kind of struggle when she gets kited and slowed by Warden in that way. I think the Silence is going to be especially valuable this game, but I kind of do like the draft that Melee Creeps are bringing together. Like, I get that FPS Lounge are getting what they want, but there's insane scaling on Melee Creeps. Like, if you go late enough into the game, I do think Melee Creeps are just going to be too powerful if they can get to that point. I think characteristically, FPS Lounge, I see them as a team that wants to be aggressive, wants to dominate lanes and just like snowball, keep control of the game until the very finish. And so it's a little scary to be planning on going late game against a team that, often ends early. And with Mo Krill picked as well, FPS Lounge, they're just going to triple down. Like, they are going to look to put a ton of pressure on Melee Creeps in this game. And there's going to be a lot of burden on, especially I think Do and John to get online early on Mirage and Pocket respectively.
Mo and Krill doesn't seem to appear a lot in the matches and the draft that we've seen, but they were appearing a lot in FPS Lounge's matches leading up to this event, ZP.
Yeah, and the reason for that is it's Hydration's favorite hero, perhaps, at this point, where even in metas where Mo and Krill was entirely absent, Team's Hydration was on, and, back in the day to be things like the old version of Floorman or, Sneaky Golem, etc. Like, Hydration would just go, yeah, I'm going to play the Mo and Krill. And for FPS Lounge, it's kind of interesting the role he's taken, where in a meta where people don't necessarily pick support heroes quite as often, you'll still see Hydration prioritize the Mo, or if, Mo's not available, potentially the Viscous. But also in terms of things with a little bit more support option, Melee Creep's picking up the Ivy, which you didn't actually see Ivy a ton in the scrims this week for NAs. So, Melee Creeps are making some changes here, although part of it may also just be the fact that you got Ranger subbing in over Saya. So I'm sure that had some impact on, the hero pool calculation here too.
Yeah, I always think when if you're going to have any kind of sub or roster situation, you want your sub to be as comfortable as possible, right? Like, it's already going to be a challenge to be playing in a team environment where, you're not used to that exact player, where the role tends to be shaped to this specific player on the team. There's going to be some discomfort there. So at least they should be able to be on a hero that they're rock solid on. There's no question about their ability to execute confidently and just play good Deadlock. I also don't mind the Ivy this game. I mean, the Stomp can be pretty powerful to shut down Mo. You can cancel things like the Warden ulti or dodge the reanimation stun from Victor. But on top of that, just a really solid save. When people are being jumped or ganked by this FPS Lounge squad, they're probably going to be looked at doing, from like minute 5 on. Ivy ult save could be, a nice reliable way to potentially pull some of these players out of trouble.
What's interesting is that they'd still bring in Abrams, which I know has been kind of in flux with the meta right now. ZP, we actually you talked about that last week, in fact, but it was Saya who kind of came on, said, hey, maybe this character isn't so bad, but Saya, not being here, so they just actually really believe as a team in Abrams, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be fish cake on it, but look, I think some of the Abrams downplay has been a little bit much. I feel like Abrams is in his Shiv 2 weak arc at the moment across the scene, where people's like, oh, I don't know, like, is this hero actually good right now? And then people's like, wait a second, he still has like one of the most reliable displacements, crowd controls of the entire game with shoulder charge. There's so many ways to set it up. Yeah, this hero is still good in the way that, like, Shiv every now and then will take like a small nerf, and the community will vastly overact and be like, Shiv's dead. And then it's like, But wait, he's not dead. He's not dead. Like, first pick him again. It's just like, what was this purpose even for? So yeah, I don't know. I've never been a believer that Abrams is dead. I think it's like perfectly fine for Melee Creeps, and arguably, you look at this a few weeks and I was like, oh, actually a little bit of value to get that late in the draft.
Yeah. There's any thoughts on the drafts overall here, Jake? Do you have a preference as to who might be coming out a little ahead here in the drafting phase?
I do start to, I think as more and more time goes on in Deadlock, I more and more favor these like tempo drafts that trying to like dominate early and snowball over the draft with like better late game, because in the end, if you give up the laning phase and you accept that you're going to fall behind early and you play for the comeback, you are kind of hoping that the enemy team makes a mistake. You just need like one big comeback fight, to get towards a late game, some big team fight with Pocket and Celeste. Like, it's absolutely doable. However, I'd rather be FPS Lounge and just kind of be in control of the game from the early phase onward. We'll have to see if that actually comes to fruition. I think if Pocket has a crazy game, I mean, it's really just combo to deal with Pocket. And I think with Indomitable in the game now, it's a little bit scarier to go to that ultra late phase against Pocket. Like, typically in the ultra late, this hero just does not die unless he gets hard caught and like full bursted by a stun, which should be, Mo and Krill's absolute wheelhouse. But Mo has always been a hero that has struggled to scale and has fallen off into the late game, and that problem could be acute here. So it's very like melee creeps, I think, to draft themselves the better late game and to try to weather the storm. But in recent times, it hasn't been working for them. It's been teams playing faster like FPS Lounge that have been getting the wins.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up exactly. It seems like the conversation starts today. Melee creeps, great drafts, have a lot of potential here. And then either, they did give up that laning phase, maybe knowingly hoping to bring it back, or just frankly, they didn't do well in that laning phase and were never able to actually bring it back. So that's kind of been a, dangerous point for them, I guess, is staying even, or of course getting ahead in the early game and then actually delivering as time goes on. ZP, any thoughts? Any preference for you?
Yeah, I mean, as I look at this draft, I do think like the laning phase for FPS Lounge is pretty good. I think also their like first few earn fights are probably just straight up better in terms of team comp v team comp. And it's not that melee creeps don't have win conditions with this too. It's like always a little bit weird where you have Pocket. You always have the ability to just rip off a team fight with 3 or 4 man affliction, especially before divine barriers come on in. But the reality is that you look at FPS Lounge, you have one lane that's going to be auto advantage by virtue of just having Apollo. You have Victor, who's basically played as a huge macro advantage and being able to shove walkers pretty efficiently early into the game. And yeah, for melee creeps, you do have Celeste, who can fit somewhat of the same role, and I think maybe at some level has been somewhat undervalued. But overall, like, I think FPS Lounge not only have like better options for early and mid game team fighting with their composition, but also they're going to have a bit of a better laning phase. Melee creeps still possible to come out okay, but the deck is definitely stacked against them. And even when you go into the late game, I don't know if their late game advantage is all that massive. Like, yeah, heroes like Mo and Krill do tail off towards the end, but Warden is still really deadly in the late game. Victor is still Victor, even if he's in a gun build sort of situation. Like, the advantages that melee creeps get into the end game, it's, maybe more like 55, 45, and they're more up against like, 60-40 advantage against them in the early mid game. So there is a path to victory, but it's a lot more narrow for melee creeps on the draft.
I see. And Jake, you brought up Indomitable, which is an interesting point because, this has been a conversation amongst the community since it has been released, right? Like, the initial reactions were probably 50-50 of it's amazing or it's going to suck. And it feels like maybe community-wise there hasn't really been a decision, but maybe amongst the pros, it's not as great as it would have seemed.
I think it's not a particularly good item, I will say. Like, it's not an item you're going to rush by any means, but it's more of an item that you'll probably grab on, like, Pocket and Mirage against Mo at, like 45 minutes. It's really just like gives you a more powerful endgame win condition where, effectively characters like Mo, essentially he's just a combo in the late game, right? Like, that's realistically the only thing you do. In like the ultra late game, that's your whole contribution. And so that can be a problem, right? In that there is an item that potentially hard counters it. If we even get to that point in the game, though, I will say I feel like melee creeps may have already kind of won, right? Like, you were talking 50k, 60k souls here, to where you're gonna be picking that item up as like an extra get out of jail free card. Pocket's probably gonna go all in on the damage for quite some time before we get to that point. So, I think in the end, maybe as for FPS Lounge, you just say like, look, we don't care. You're not gonna get to the point in the game where those items are coming online. We're gonna tempo you out. We're gonna force team fights early. They have a ton of spirit damage. Like, if you put Warden and Victor in the side lanes, as I think is pretty likely. Lash, Mo, Shiv, and Apollo has an incredible amount of spirit damage. You got Mo for the combos. They're going to be looking pretty scary to challenge anywhere around min-map in the jungles. On the other side, for melee creeps, it's a lot of stuns, right? Silver, Abrams, and Ivy. there's a crazy stun chain there. So, you know, if you catch anybody alone, they are going to be in massive trouble, right? Hit with the entangling bola, shoulder charge, into the stone form from Ivy. Like pretty much anything is going to die in the mid game to that. So I actually think both teams have interesting drafts. I liked it. Melee Creeps got very much player preference comfort heroes with John John's Mirage and Dew's Pocket. But FPS Lounge, recent history, you got to consider them the favorite.
Well, FPS Lounge has been looking very good. They won the qualifier to get here to face Melee Creeps in this best of one to hopefully go into the finals, but Melee Creeps looking to redeem themselves after a string of defeats. Guys, take it away for game one of Melee Creeps versus FPS Lounge.
Thank you, ZG. And, you know, Jake, as I'm looking at this setup here, too, John John's going to be playing Try to Survive, I think, for half of this game, because as you get into the later game, the uptime for Mirage, DPS-wise, can actually be pretty heavily contested if you're going to have a Victor running at you, if you have to space in such a way you don't get hit by combo, and the fact that you still, all the while, look into the skies because of Lash being a threat. Like, I look at John John's objective survive into the late game, and there's a lot of pressure on him, especially with him being likely in position 1 and, you know, being focused on getting the most farm on the team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Mirage, you know, I think what I like about Mirage as a carry is that he's also a pretty strong laner, right? Like he's no slouch, especially, you know, you get that level 2, right? You get your Jin's mark online and you just become really annoying to lane against. That being said, on Apollo, the other side, one of the best Spirit Nukers early, Abrams is going to have his work cut out for him trying to frontline through this, especially with a player like Rokane on the ward. And you can just, the accuracy he has with this primary is so significant, makes it very difficult for Abrams to really ever challenge in the mid game.
I think when I look at win conditions here for Melee Creeps, a lot of it to me is just staying even until earn fight, and then honestly a lot of eyes on Ido, where, you know, Ido at the very least getting the go-to is, you know, once and former bread and butter, where it's just like Ido on Pocket, don't let Ido get Pocket. Kind of a bit removed from that era where you'd see Ido on Pocket super often, and yet when you think about what Melee Creeps needs to win some of these team fights, you kind of are hoping for consistent 2-3 man afflictions to kind of counterbalance, you know, the otherwise team fight advantage FPS Lounge probably has early on.
Gonna be a little fight here over the small camp. Something that Apollo always wants, right? No one wants to damage the creeps because Apollo has the burst. Mirage gonna step over to the other side, grab the opposite camp. Maybe look to get a trade that way. Apollo just a little bit too scary to fight. Looks like Rokane, though, knows it happened. He's going to try and get a punish, but with a missed flask. Probably not going to happen under that one. They can get some extra harass in, though. Apollo getting the opportunity, but Tornado is leveled, and I actually believe John had to take Tornado instead of Jin's mark there, so that's not going to feel great on the lane, actually. I mean, he lives that time, but it, you know, a price is exacted here by FPS Lounge in the mid lane.
Yeah, I mean, especially with lane tempo, where you might go, oh, you know, it's not the biggest amount of damage. Just like, even a little bit of poke has big knockoff effects.
That pin hurts, though.
Nice charge in there. I mean, that's taking a good HP tax off of Poppers, where it means a lot. You're down half HP, you're not going to be as aggressive on the dive. Still, looking for John, 300 HP. Warden right on top of him, but you got the cover in from Scout. Should be able to just get back to tower.
Still, Rokane's the healthiest player on this lane. It's going to be a problem. Hydration also getting incredibly low in the side lane. Dew does run it down on Celeste, and actually, now that I say, I just realized it is actually Ido on the pocket. You're right. I didn't even suspect it because it's always Dew on the pocket for this team, but interestingly enough, he's going to be on Celeste this time. Ido back to the classic.
Well, in this case, you know, they're actually running 2 movement heroes at once, and, you know, the interesting thing for Melee Creeps, if they were to win this, is they didn't get a lot of scrim time this week, Jake. Like, Dew was on vacation, so their scrims were pretty heavily limited relative to the FPS Lounge, who was just, you know, bopping everyone all week per the Scrimbuck hotline. So, yeah, a lot to be said for Melee Creeps if they're able to turn this one in their favor, because, you know, everything leading into this is kind of indicating FPS Lounge.
Definitely would be the expectation. Lomane onto the Shiv, though. It's going to be an exciting player to watch. I mean, I think for me personally, Lomane, probably my favorite player to watch here on this FPS Lounge squad. Just always playing these flashy playmakers, permanent fights. Always expect big things out of him in the lane. Taking a trade with Pocket. A lot of damage in, but Shiv is completely out of gas into this one. So it's some nice nukes from Ido. Not much Shiv can do, and Shiv has gone the greedy damage build, so he just doesn't have the sustain to stick around much in this lane and wants to maybe grab a heal creep off the back of this one, but Shiv's a hero that really struggles when he gets this low on the lane. If you just die to 1 nuke combo from Pocket, you really can't take any risks.
It's interesting to bring that up too, because usually Shivs don't go the super greedy build, unless you're backed up by something like a Rem that can, give you healing and kind of offset you going full greed. See how it pans out, but back over in the middle, Scout coming within, a breadth of dying there. Dealing against the Apollo, not always the easiest thing, although you look at the HP, John's actually been having pretty effective poke the other way, so for dealing with the Apollo lane, I actually think Melee Creeps have done quite well in middle so far, and also able to secure at least one of the buffs.
Yeah, Scout's been low since the beginning, but he hasn't died, right? He's just staying alive, being a thorn in the side. Oh, quad stack here for Pocket. It's going to be a big threat on that lane. On the other side of the map, Celeste with a Shining Wonder finds a quick kill onto left. Hydration trying to trade it back, but Celeste, we're talking about, the chase down by Mo doesn't seem likely, and he just has to burrow, head back to the tower.
You just look at do air strafing for dear life, but yeah, gets out cleanly. Also, Snake's in kind of a bit of danger here. Like, looking at overall HP across the map, as Victor, you're just like, okay, it's fine, gonna get shocking reanimation up soon, but there's that brief window where you could die pre 3.6k.
Yeah, it looks like they had to both take resets to get their HP back up, and I know staying in this lane means he has Affliction online. Snake's healthy enough as he comes back into this lane to where you don't necessarily want to dive, with Victor being pretty close on the ultimate, right? Looks like maybe just one wave for him to grab, a couple boxes, and he should have it online. Another fight breaking out on the side lane. Dude, though, grabbed by the ult and caught by the combo to follow up, but a beautiful save from Ranger gets him out of trouble, and both ultimates essentially thrown in for nothing. Now Celeste goes for the re-engage Dude, despite low on HP, still wants to fight more, and Ranger by his side is a real threat here. The sub for Melee Creeps already looking strong.
Elsewhere on the map, double Affliction goes down. Snake's nearly dead. Low main shaking it off, and looks like Snakes was able to get out of danger. Also, not much Guardian damage done in turn of it. I'm just a little bit surprised there wasn't more of a chase down, but in this case, Snake's going back to base for the second time in the last 3 minutes.
Melee Creeps, they might not have had much scrim time, but the players on this squad, all individually, some of the strongest here in NA, so definitely don't expect them to go down easy, especially in the laning phase where mechanics tend to be king. Scout.
I think so far, given what we know of the laning phase and, both teams' win conditions, you're pretty happy for being where you are now for Melee Creeps. It's just, can you take the small little edge you've started to build up here and turn that into a win on first turn? I think first turn is going to be so formative to this game as, Scout caught out a little bit, ends up falling. Warden taking some damage in turn, but, John actually going in. John thinks it's vulnerable.
They get a chance to put some harassment down.
Yeah.
With the Tylo San ready and the Spirit Spike online, Poppers thinking about getting aggressive, but this is a Mirage we're talking about. It's a very scary hero to take these extended trades against, and he is going to back off, but losing Scout, honestly, not the end of the world, right? John gets some, solo creeps, put some counter harassment down, and Rokane has to go back to base, take a reset. So there's not going to be much more pressure here on the mid lane.
Once more, taking a look at the left. Ido moving forward, shocking reanimation proc here on the Snakes. Rest of the fight, though, bouncing out a little bit, not turning into a deep dive here. No, actually, take that back. Lightning Curse popped, a little bit more damage on the Shiv, but neither side full committing.
The state of Victor right now is so interesting because normally you'd look at that shocking reanimation and say, oh, that, pretty bad, essentially wasted, not much value had from it, but honestly, having that spirit damage per bullet online is a pretty big deal with all the camp sub increasing all of your farm rate. So low main continues to put the pressure on, does get kind of grabbed under the tower and has to use that execute just to get out of trouble. So well played by Fishcake, but he's going to be low enough to where even he might have to consider a reset.
Meanwhile, looking at middle, a little bit back and forth. Affliction, though, on this lane coming out, hits 2. And this time around, Snake, no shocking reanimation, getting burned down in a hurry. Ido looking for the finish. Cloak out, gets the cutoff, and surely Snake is going to go down here at 1 HP, and yet still alive. Tried to break some ankles. Just needs a few more shots and wait. Surely not.
It's not like he can get it. Well played by Snakes, evading that super effectively. I mean, did get down to just a sliver of HP. The heals were enough. Tylo San now out onto Silver. Does get low, but riposte wasted. No damage in on that one. Silver's continuing to fight this one, even without the ultimate, just in human form. And Ido with the melee grabs the finish onto Poppers. Nice shutdown there. And Silver has enough HP to hold on to this one. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the map, the combo comes in, but once again, Ranger with the save ensures Celeste stays on the map, stays active, and she's right back to pressuring this tower.
I think Ranger may be the hidden hero of this lane, too. We've been seeing Dude just kind of pushing the limit on how aggressive, and a lot, I think, has just been Ranger just backing things up, early supportive build. And yeah, I mean, Dude's been having one heck of a game. And you guys see from melee creeps, especially you watch some of the scrims, like, yeah, again, Dude back. Pretty impactful, as it turns out.
Victor now over to the mid lane, puts that spirit damage to work to grab that mid T1. A big rotation, actually, of players here from FPS Lounge. See if there's any kills to be extracted. Looks like a parry onto Scout that was going to cost him his life. Got kind of brutally outplayed there. Thought he could just get that easy finish on the Snakes, but Hydration, or rather John does get the job done at the end of the day. So still extracting a kill, but with mid Guardian down and no real chance to counter pressure, it does feel a little bit scary here for FPS Lounge.
FPS Lounge do going in, a bit more dive hydration in the crosshairs. Celeste right behind, just needs a few more hits and nowhere for hydration to go. Also, meanwhile, as this is happening, there's still been a casting buff up for grabs for quite a while. Lycan Curse popped, this time low main, looking for the escape. Enough to stop Silver from moving in. Still,
Victor running it down. All these slows starting to stack up. Yeah, I don't think Silver's going to be able to get out of this one. Gets a little bit of extra tower damage in, but now Snake's kind of racking up a lot of impact across the map. And has gone for a farming build too with that active reload. So watch out for this Victor as the game goes late. I mean, this guy could scale pretty effectively. Not doing too well just yet, but give him the chance. He might be able to farm back up. I mean, Victor actually has a pretty good recovery path as a hero.
This is really interesting. You got earn control for melee creeps, and FPS Lounge, they're not in the best state to contest. Like, ideally, you would love to have Flash have Death Slam up. It's not up now, so you don't really have the huge threat to stop from going for a dunk. I mean, the biggest thing is, okay, hydration is near the turn-in, but if you're melee creeps, you have a wonderful opportunity right now. Push, but okay, Do may have gotten themselves a bit of trouble. Combo out on one end, Do running for his life on the other. FPS Lounge able to walk forward and pick up two, so not able to set up for the dunk the way they would like. And that leads into a quick pause, Jake.
Yeah, it seems like this fight's already over. FPS Lounge really routing melee creeps there, like 2 quick kills off the back of the combo. It's a rough one, right? Because those are 2 players that so far were having a pretty good game, right? I felt like Do was kind of untouchable, was getting saved out of every kind of team fight. Fishcake was doing really well on the opposite side of the map. These side lanes were really strong moments for them. But now that advantage for melee creeps pretty much fully deteriorated. Since Ivy does hold the urn, though, I don't expect it to really go in either team's hands now with FPS Lounge and map control.
Also, can we get a look at John here? Because I think John's about to kill Leffa. Which, this could be a massive, massive boon for John. Because think about it, if John gets a solo kill on the Leffa, and then potentially gets Walker, at least a good amount of Walker damage, I mean, it is the dream.
Oh, he doesn't quite take out. Oh, it's close.
Yeah, I mean, if Leffa survives, he's going to be able to heal, and I don't think John's going to be able to get the Guardian to get on the Walker time as Ido just barely escapes.
Yeah, you don't want to dive with Apollo here. It's too risky. And Ivy's going to be here to put a defense on. A lot of players, though, maybe want to continue this fight with a riposte away. Apollo should be good for the moment. But a lot of presence being shown here by melee creeps. Ido's healing up, going to be back to this fight soon. Don't think there's going to be much opportunity to damage walkers. You can see they're so aware of this threat from FPS Lounge, right? With Warden and Victor, man, pretty much any tower you get a strong stance to siege is going to go down fast.
I really like this though for melee creeps. You have just an insane advantage on the left. There's no way that Leffa can really contest John that effectively. And at some point, you're going to have to pull someone to help on the left Walker defense. And otherwise, melee creeps are still getting decent skirmishes on the other lanes.
Reanimation out from Snakes. Doesn't seem like there's going to be much more follow-up than that. Apollo trying to run down Celeste, but even Apollo can't quite match the Dancer's incredible mobility as Do slips away back to the jungle, grabs some creeps for his trouble. His mid lane, though, continues to be a site of aggression. A lot of attempt to challenge and fight, but I will say these resto lockets are a nice way to punish Apollo. Definitely something for folks at home to pick up if they're struggling into this Mahiro matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the best counter buys in the game for Resto Locket, Apollo and Geist. Anyone that's sitting out here just spamming abilities, it's in your favor. I mean, it's not even just Apollo in this case, too. Just Shiv knife spam gets pretty intense.
Yeah, a lot of tiros for it. Finally, the mid Guardian is going to go down. Took enough tries. Big pin in on Apollo, but I think it's a wise pull from Ranger. There's no chance they're actually killing Apollo with full skills online. And as they bring numbers over to this right side engagement, Rokane's already found a kill. It seems like maybe there's going to be more to find. He's going deep on Rokane, but this is quite close to the Walker. Even mows around. Scout, though, is healing massively off this cursed book. Still has the ultimate online if he wants to try to get out of trouble.
Might have the seismic slam here to get out. Immediately pops it and leaves. I don't know if that gives enough clearance. Now, while this is going on, Snakes gets caught, and so does Dew. So it's a 1-for-1 trade while we're seeing this chase down on the Scout. Scout at 300 HP in a Dream. Still fire from the back. Desperately trying to get to the jump pad, which has a little bit of natural cover. Decides, nope, I'm going to get interrupted. I'm going to take the other way around. A little bit of extra mobility. And the help from the team does free out Scout to get away.
Crazy, like 3-minute team fight here on the right side of the map. Rocane getting hugely active. I mean, on 14k souls, he's saying now's the time to go, right? Has that silence trap online on Warden. I'm curious, like, did he go for the silence trap before Max Flask?
Might have
gotten. Yeah, he did. Wow. Okay, that's unconventional. Pretty much everyone maxes Flask first for the farm potential. So Rocane has a strong game going and is really committing to this kind of early game pressure strategy.
I mean, if nothing else, I think it's definitely targeted more towards Idol. An extra silence versus pocket early is invaluable. Also, while we're in the middle of that fight, it's worth knowing that Earn does go over the FPS Lounge, and yet, you know, Melee Creeps has done enough in terms of skirmishing and otherwise that it's still about a perfectly even game thus far.
It is even. In theory, from what we were saying in the draft, is good for the Melee Creeps, but vibe check on this game definitely feels like FPS Lounge have a bit more map control, showing a bit more presence. Silver now in the sights. Doesn't have much damage down to proc that ultimate. But does have the Hunter's Aura online, which is always going to be a really nice find for her. It really makes getting those solo kills a lot easier, especially when you get into that Lycan form. And with Earn control in the hands of Scout, Left is going to, poke and prod here, but I doubt he's going to make a serious attempt to grab this Earn. And you see Scout completely disrespecting it, just going to path straight through the lanes.
Hear me out here on Earn control. I think if you're Melee Creeps, you're not necessarily looking to dunk. Like, look at the rotation here. You're going to have Mirage go off to the opposite lane, and you have Earn, and you're pulling in people from FPS Lounge. I think Earn is not even what you really want here. What you want is to give John the ability to go off and push. Now, what John doesn't know is that you got a Lash hiding in reserve here specifically to look to punish John. This is interesting because you'd assume Lash would be on the left side, but John now getting caught on the right. See if they're able to finish him off. It's a dive from both, and I think John got free.
Nice return fire here. Makes Shiv struggle, but a good juke. Dodges the dash completely. That's a max dash, so not going to get any of that cooldown reduction for low main. Fishcake going to get the chance to clear the wave. With Pocket coming in, I think we might see a fight here on the left lane. Ido, 13k. Let's see what we can do with the Affliction. An airdrop on this Abrams. He's going to try to maybe pull him into the Urn, but it's going kind of painfully slow. There's maybe going to be a chance to grab the melee, and they even do grab that combo onto one. Abrams just holding the attention of the enemies as long as he can, but the Urn does slip out of his hands. Here comes the Lash ult from above, pulls 3 players up, slams them back down, all into Rokane's Warden ultimate, but somehow Melee Creeps, they're healthy. They're tanking through this.
Yeah, it went way better than expected, despite the opening being a little bit awkward, trying to force the dunk. We'll see. Fishcake ends up falling. Hydration able to finish off. Slam down in from Scout into the heavy melee. Earn still up for grabs. John able to get Rocane. He's TP'd over into the fight. Was in the right lane. Uses the Traveler to come on in. Lowman and Poppers, though, able to find 2 on the back. Dew and John, the last 2 remaining. Ido dancing around. It is a bloodbath for both sides. But John and Dew, they're still really healthy here.
And John, he's got max Jin's mark. These long fights really starting to favor him. It's a strong moment for him. And Celeste, even still thinking about running the Urn, drops it instead and tries to turn and look for the kill onto Poppers, who's on just slivers of HP. Players respawning back into this fight. More numbers going to continue to be thrown into this one as John finds another, a 3 streak for him on the fight. Even picks up the Urn to threaten it. And can FPS Lounge stick around for more? They've got spawners coming back into this too. John is low. It won't be easy for the Melee Creeps.
This is really bad for FPS Lounge. The person you don't want getting cleanup kills, especially not getting Urn dunk, is John, who somehow gets it and is able to Dust Devil away as Leffa gets caught. Leffa's going in to try and interrupt it, so that you don't get the interrupt. You lose the kill, and the Mirage picks up all the buffs from the Urn. That is a huge get from Melee Creeps.
And what a heal from Ranger too. Like just after John tornadoes out, he gets healed for I think 1,000 just from Ranger's link, and it must have been a healing Nova as well. So really well played fight from John. Lived to tell the tale. Him and Dew, right? We had talked about them. They're the 2 carries of this team, right? The 2 players with generally the most farm priority, and here they're really showing up and delivering a meaningful team fight on the back of it.
And even though the aggregate right now, 89k to 86k, I look at who's getting the farm, and Mirage getting farmed huge. Although, on the same note here, Jake, even with some of these fights going the other way, I mean, FPS Lounge may be like, yeah, it's fine. Look, have you seen Rocane? Rocane is still in a really, really good spot. So, you know, despite some of the heroics on that last fight, FPS Lounge is in a great spot still. I mean, the only thing that worries me a little bit is like, yeah, Victor doesn't need as much farm as he's needed historically, but 13k Victor does feel a little bit on the poor side.
Yeah, you know, Victor, yeah, maybe you don't, you know, quote unquote need the farm, but we saw in that fight, like, you can get through 2 Victor lives. It's not that big of a deal, especially for Mirage, who really doesn't mind taking a long extended fight, poking the Victor down. You know, this is not like a Warden who has like this one big hit as a carry and, you know, wants to kind of decisively end the fight. John's more than happy to sit and poke and prod away. And, you know, we talked about the scaling issues on this team. I do think we're not yet in the realm of really being worried for FPS Lounge, but I think Melee Creeps winning that fight really does set the tone for the rest of the match.
Once more, into the middle. Boss of Dance on the Scout, who's shrugging off most of it. Shoulder charge in response, and now the chase down. In on the Poppers, half HP. Melee Creeps all around, and even for Apollo, it's gonna be a sticky situation to get out of. Low HP, down Ido with the finish. Clean pick off here onto Apollo. While this is going on, FPS Lounge, they're pressuring the left, and they should be getting Walker off this. So macro-wise, if you're Melee Creeps, you need to get right Walker to make that worthwhile.
Ivy gonna grab the silver and throw her in deep. They're thinking about trying to pressure Lomane. Lomane's doing a great job, though, just clears the minions off the wave, and I think that might just kill this Walker push single-handedly. Did Ido just take a Walker Stomp? He's on 1 HP. That is, I don't know how he got that low otherwise. And now here comes the turnaround. Lomane coming back into the fight, has max dash. Gonna be very low CD on this. You gotta be very careful sticking around too long with players coming back in. And yeah, Fishcake does go down. So an ill-advised Walker dive, poorly executed from Melee Creeps. And the FPS Lounge are gonna be taking that all the way to the bank. Snakes does pop his reanimation, but John just has to TP away. Can't stick around, and when an earn dunk comes through. So well played mid-game by FPS Lounge.
Upside here, the TP into the opposite side of the map should be a Walker for Melee Creeps, but overall, I mean, FPS Lounge definitely getting the better of that because it's effectively Walker for earn versus, or rather, Walker and earn versus just Walker. I mean, macro-wise, you take those trades any day of the week.
Yeah, they're thinking about going for a Walker here, but look at Pocket behind them on the wave. You got to be watching out for this Affliction. Solo onto Snakes, but it's worth it to clean up this Victor. Get rid of the wall breaker himself. Break his wall.
Yeah, I kind of look at that and wonder, okay, did you actually need the Affliction there? Looking at the minimap, maybe they thought other people are coming, and that's why you go for that. It's like, I don't know. I feel like it's not the richest Victor. He probably just dies regardless.
Okay, Ricochet Mirage.
This is a real chase down. Onto Lomane, low HP, John, high damage.
Ooh,
now, you want to
die to
full
blood
dive.
It's so close. Okay, no, the heals are just good enough. All right, John has Ricochet. Like, that's a massive problem. Because now these big fights for FPS Lounge, they want to stack up, they want to group and burst people down with the Spirit. They're all going to be ticking as...
Oh, no, don't do it. No. Oh, God. Oh, no.
Pain. He lived, though, so low-key,
he did live, but oh, my God. Production actually with the strays on the Ido. That is...
I mean, it's a rare mistake. He hasn't been playing so much Pocket these days.
That's unbelievable. That was the most cold-blooded thing I think I've seen our production ever do. The Scout eats a little bit of launchpad damage there. Still, though, like 22 minutes in, and that is even as it gets thus far.
Yeah, Lomane has gone very much for the tanky Shiv build, right? Maxing dash, even with a couple points invested into bloodletting. So he's really constantly up in the enemy's face, even thinking about a dive down on Silver. Silver might need to proc the Lycan Curse just to stay alive. Holds on for now and wants to save it for potentially bigger value in a future team fight. Fishcake has gone for quite the tanky build, so just holding some frontline, making space. In the end, if Ido hits an Affliction and John is ticking you out with Jin's marks, like, honestly, those are the only two things that I think Melee Creeps need to win a fight.
Yeah, I think the win conditions for Melee Creeps have gone considerably better, and you know, even for FPS Lounge, I was getting a little bit worried with them potentially committing to a mid push. Like, you really can't commit to a push at all right now without a pick of some sort, especially with mid boss being a threat. Next team to get 2 or 3 uncontested picks easily goes mid boss, and suddenly we go from even game to heavily advantaged. But taking a look at Hydration, gets the blink over, in on the Ranger. Ranger got stone form. Death Slam up, over, all this for just an Ivy. and it's good enough to take down Ranger. What opportunities is it going to open up here, Jake, though, is the question.
I'm not sure if there's a chance to counter engage. John's holding his own at the Walker here, has to deal with Rokane, so can't really afford to back out. The fight continues to progress here around the mid. Silver looks to step up and maybe put some damage down herself, but challenging into low main's Shiv is maybe not what you want to go for. Affliction onto 3, though. It's big. It does connect to the Shiv. The frontliners for FPS Lounge ticking down. John looks like he's winning that fight against Rokane in the side lane. It's incredibly close. Actually, they both kill each other, so carries off the map. More players continuing to fight and force this into the mid lane. And with Silver popping the ultimate, I think that's going to be just enough for melee creeps to overwhelm. They're starting to swarm forward, chase these players down. Snakes, no chance on the retreat. And we got to get a replay. John and Rokane killed each other. It was that close in the 1v1 on the side lane.
Yeah, they took each other down, but also, Jake, you know what? It may be 2 stomps from the Walker and the Ido, but Ido says the map checks out when I get a 3-man affliction. That gives us mid-boss melee creeps off the team fight. Big advantage here on the mid-boss. Still may be a bit of a contest. Leffa and Poppers in the neighborhood. We'll see how much of a contest it ends up being. Apollo poking from the top. Rejuvenator nearly down.
Hard.
Surely no one goes in on this one, and they don't. All 3 rejuves, the way of melee creeps, potentially about to lead to their first advantage of the game.
Yeah, it's massive. It's just, yeah, that's exactly what you needed to slow this game down further, right? Buy more time. John has Ricochet online. It's still a contest for the urn. FPS Lounge showing a lot of presence on the map here. They're really not afraid to fight this. Even though Mirage spawning could TP in, they could force the team fight here and now. Poppers doesn't have that repulse available. Might get run down onto this one because melee creeps are blood hungry here. Want to find kills and maybe open up this right side Walker. John's going to hold that mid push from Snakes. But FPS Lounge showing no fear here despite being down to the triple rejuve.
Yeah, I think in a way, like, because it's still even in terms of stats, you do have to look for a contest here. If you do get a pick on someone that's a little bit out of position, like, you can fight in a way that you can't against the average rejuve fight, where, you know, often the team that has no rejuve is down 20k. Snakes, though, continuing to be the main target. Brought down the half, and maybe a quick shot range. And Ido does it again! 3-man affliction, counter death slam. In on to just do Walker stop ahoy once more.
Dude's living. Dude's living.
Yeah, dude's fine.
Heal from
Survival
Ranger.
buff.
Can't believe he stays up through that, through the Walker Storm and the combo. The affliction's still ticking. Lomane, he has to go back to the base. Surely he can't stick around and fight this. In the end, the only real prize is urn control, but that's kind of the most realistic prize to be achieving at this point in the game. Mo, though, setting up for a gank. They want a +1 on Rokane. Ido, see if he can sniff this one out. Could be in real trouble on Pocket on the side lane.
Nice little catch from Scout. Not going to lead the too much, but you just know off shoulder charge where you can get the nice little clip onto the mid sign. Airdrop, though. In here from Ranger. Urn still moving, in control of melee creeps. Looking for the quick dunk. Not going to be much of a contest this time. Just rejuve too much to go after in this moment. Instead, FPS Lounge saying our prize is going to be right-hand Walker if we can get it. Now, while this is going on, Dude was able to get the snakes. John, middle defense, able to get hydration. They don't get the Walker, but they are getting the hands, Jake.
Yeah, John gets the cleanup, dies for the kill, but is more than happy to get a rejuve out that way, right? So much value getting that huge kill onto Rokane. 33k Souls Warden, worth his weight in gold. Or in this case, Souls has now melee creeps, you know, it's essentially carte blanche. They can just send it down mid. Leffa doesn't even have a Death Slam to potentially even threaten these players pushing Walkers. So we're definitely going to see both Walkers drop, and I feel like you might as well just snowball this into a base Guardian Siege. Maybe you got 10k souls on Dewey, might try to spend some of that out before they really commit to the next team fight, but huge advantage melee creeps.
I mean, here you are hoping to get both Guardians and Walkers. Okay, we got the 1v1. The fight of destiny over. Oh, that was right to the limit there, Jake.
Yeah, the trap finishes him after Warden dies. And the only reason Warden can still shoot is because he's silenced. He can't proc the Jids mark early with the manual proc. So crazy. That's such a rare circumstance where two hyper farmed carries are so closely matched that they actually both take each other out from the grave.
I also just enjoy the source physics where, for whatever reason, you just see John's body like just shuddering on the ground after. It's just like
traumatized.
Just too intense of a fight. The adrenaline is just everywhere. Oh man. Yeah, he's safe. We know he's safe looking at the map, but there's some high intensity gambling from Ido there. 200 HP. No fear in the world.
Never stop gambling. That's what we always say here on the night shift. Snakes trying to grab some extra farm out of this one, but Victor does feel like he's kind of met his match this game, ZP. I don't know what you think about it, but I really feel like he's in the middle of the fight as he kind of needs to be, but it means he's just tanking an Affliction every single fight. Feels like that alone almost deals with the first life. And then John is more than happy sitting in the back. He's got Rico Inhib, the classic Mirage build, late game status debuff. It's incredibly hard to fight when Mirage is constantly just chain debuffing you with Toxic, Inhib, Jin's Mark.
Jake, I think the thing is that teams had a lot of time to prep and plan to deal with the Victor this week. I mean, again, if you looked at the Scrimbuck hotline, FPS Lounge was ruining all of North America this week, and a lot of it was higher priority on Victor, but if you get punched and beaten by the same method so many times in a row, you know, maybe it's match day where you finally put it all together and say, okay, here's how we're going to approach this, and we actually have the answer this time around. So I think it feels a little bit bad for FPS Lounge if they're not able to turn around this game. You know, it's kind of one of those scenarios, Jake, where you peaked a little bit too early.
And the Indom, it's online. Uh-oh. See if this Affliction is going to go down. Indom has been pulled out. Big opportunity for the Death Slam. Looks like it's just 2 pulled in, but will they be able to finish one off? Affliction onto 4. There's no rejuves. 2 is down. And so will the Affliction be enough damage to carry? See what John can get into this. Italio San onto 3. And over the top, seismic impact from Abrams has to just back out of this one. Doesn't want to get stunned down by the Victor. More fight continuing. There's 3 players out of the fight with that Affliction on them.
Jake, Ido has been spreading Affliction more effectively than a cruise ship from what we're seeing here so far. It's unreal. Last few fights, 3 Afflictions. That fight, 4 Afflictions. This was the win condition we talked about at the beginning of the day of, okay, you know, what are you going to need off your pocket? Well, you need what we've been seeing here as Ricane just gets run down by Silver towards the very end. It's not over yet.
Yeah, maybe more to find. Got to play this one a little bit careful on Fish Cake, but John has more than enough damage. Double tornading around him. Hydration kind of steps back in, tries to get a counter kill, but can't quite find it. Lash is going straight down the lane. Leffa wants to grab this urn control, but it's kind of scary. I don't see how he actually gets out with this urn with Ranger on the case. And yeah, he knows he can't even really pick it up. Not much point to do so. As John steams forward, he's got his true target in the sights. It's these shrines. If they can get a double shrine right now, that'll be backbreaking. At FPS Lounge, they've got a strong team fight comp, but I don't really see how they challenge with double shrines pushing against them. Ranger doing God's work, dunking the urn at the same time. So this advantage is only ballooning now for Melee Creeps. They might get their first chance at the money match in quite some time, and then it's a week with the sub.
Yeah, that's the most ridiculous part, is that they're doing it without Saya, who many people consider to be the most important piece on Melee Creeps. Sometimes Coach just has to come in and show you how it's done, Jake. Because, of course, Ranger coach of the team.
He's had an impact game. Like, he is not getting picked off at all in this Ivy. He's had a ton of big saves that have, like, meaningfully kept John alive in the fight. Think about the early game. Do was pulled out of a terrible situation like 4 or 5 times from Ivy. In the end, it is only 1 shrine that goes down, so, you know, Melee Creep's going to be a little bit conservative. Don't want to risk, you know, throwing away this advantage with mid-boss spawning. Probably the wiser choice. See how they choose to force this? Now they have that macro advantage. Middle and left lane are constantly going to be pushing against FPS Lounge. Who's going to be dealing with that?
All right. Melee Creeps nursing a considerable lead here at the moment. 34K. We've seen bigger leads be thrown, but now certainly it is their game to lose. And, you know, for FPS Lounge, you think about ways to get back in the game, you kind of have to be looking towards hydration. Like, what sort of sneaky things can you set up with Mo and Krill to get a kill and go from there? I mean, because if you don't start one of these fights with a man advantage, and ideally, you know, picking off someone like Ido before Affliction comes out, your path to victory is pretty limited.
It's so hard, though. You have to both break Indom and then, like, combo him before he can react. And this is one of the more experienced pocket players in the world. I'm a little scared about that. I think you kind of have to, I think it comes down to not letting him get a crazy Affliction. It feels like every single fight, Ido has found the perfect Affliction, which, you know, Walker stomps aside. That's what counts on pocket. Oh, trapped after the Dispel Magic. He could be in trouble, but so tanky.
Instead, he just pulls out Apollo. Still going to fall. Death Slam up over the top. 1 down from Melee Creeps. Potential opportunity for FPS Lounge. Their HP certainly still pretty good in this fight. Melee Creeps not really a spot where they can dive in. Affliction still in the tank.
Whoa, that damage onto Victor. Has to E-shift out of this. The rest of the Spirit follow-up is there, but they're struggling to actually finish off Fish Cake. It's Popper's assigned to the job, an unenviable task, because Ido's coming to assist, kind of threatening to bail this one out. If you group, there's still an Affliction available. But with mid-boss as the potential prize for this fight, a combo on a John. Hold on, are they able to burst the Mirage? Yes, they are, but Affliction onto 5. Do now comes in with the Shining Wonder, wants to clean this one up. In fact, he needs to. FPS Lounge, if they're allowed to leave this fight, they will be back into the game. So Melee Creeps forced to fight this one with a man disadvantage, but Ido is doing it all. The Affliction burns them to the ground.
That is absurd. A 5-man Affliction is the dream. This is bringing me back to 2024, where people talk about Ido and say, don't give LeBron the ball. And they're saying, don't give Pocket to Ido. Man went on a revenge mission this week here, Jake, after, what happened last week. Somewhat of an unfortunate game on Mina. Ido came in today with the bloodlust.
Get about a mid-boss flip here. Would be an interesting move. I will say, Do is incredibly strong. I don't think these 3 players on FPS Lounge can actually fight Do here with the support of his teammates. So I don't mind this flip. Scout's going to be back to potentially secure these rejuve dunks. And FPS Lounge, I think they're going to be forced to challenge here with 1 shrine already down. Lowmain is on the other side of the map. You see, he instantly gets off the wave. They did not quite expect this one to be so quick. We'll see if Shiv can make it here in time.
All right, FPS Lounge. Mid danger combo going to come on out. As my feed stopped for a second, I heard the noise.
Oh, Affliction
All 3
on the 3.
So go the way of Melee Creeps, and another 3-man Affliction, Jake.
I mean, this one is almost a gimme. Ido more than happy to collect this. I mean, honestly, what is his average afflicted targets per ult cast this game? It's got to be like 3, which is crazy. I don't think he's missed 1 that I've seen. And it seems like he's had more than his fair share of just completely teamfight dominating hits. And a little spirit buff is going to be his reward. So crazy finds here for Ido. Can he get the buy off before he keeps him? Let's see. Let's see the Affliction here. Like, everybody stacks up on John and then boom.
Oh.
Like, that is the go sign. And then Do comes in to help clean it up. Pocket assists for more. And this just looks like game. I mean, Warden's alive and quite a strong threat when it comes to the defense, but defending this shrine is going to be too much to ask for.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean, the difference between 2 teams stat-wise has gotten to be tremendous. You still got 2 rejuves in the bank. First stage Patron is just going to get carved down. And I gotta say, from Melee Creeps, I think they came into this with a tougher draft, Jake, but the execution was absolutely there.
They're going to play this one nice and slow. I actually like this. I think they can just force a fight out on the map. But Affliction does get thrown in, but I think that's more of a retreating Affliction, ensuring that Rokin and Lefa can't even really consider a chase. There's a ton of farm on the map right now. And you do still have, like, the majority of this rejuve to expand the lead and go for some greedy farm. Like, even if somebody does get caught, the rejuve means more than likely support can come in. So honestly, props to Melee Creeps. They've been out of the championship match for a long time, but in a BO1, especially against a team like FPS Lounge, you cannot give them any chances to come back in a game.
No, if there's one team that would make a comeback here, it's FPS Lounge. But I think the problem is, Jake, the way the meta has gone with some of the comps that are getting favored is that, FPS Lounge is not really running a composition that has great comeback ability. They're running a composition that kind of crushes you if they get ahead. The flip side of that is that it's not super strong at winning when you're down 50k in the late game. Not that any comp is super strong in that situation, but if you have heroes like Bebop, for example, you have more of a reasonable chance of getting a pick and starting the miracle. In this case, what they would need to win, again, they would kind of need to get an early pick off on the Ido, not get hit by an Affliction, and then ideally give a lot of space and uptime to Rokain. But at this point, Jake, it's second stage Patron, Melee Creeps. They got time to rejuve. They're looking to finish it here and now.
Indom baited. Could be a chance here. The Silence Wave breaks the Indom, but an Affliction, it's on to 4. Should be more than good enough. A combo has been thrown out on the Scout, but still with rejuves available, there's a fight to be had. Lefa finds a big connection with the Death Slam. It's followed up by Talil San onto 3, but still John continuing inexorably, pumping in damage with this Ricochet. Now you've got to come into the pit. You've got to defend this Snakes. That's his second life. He's out of the fight, out of the game. And Melee Creeps cleaning house. FPS Lounge, they've been in that money match too many times. Melee Creeps taking back their chance here. Rokain has to step up, but even he gets knocked down in FPS Lounge. That'll be it here for this challenger match. Melee Creeps with the sub finally get it done here at 38 minutes.
Absolutely phenomenal. And wow, I did not expect this at all. And neither did the chat, by the way. I think it was like 80% odds on the FPS Lounge from channel points because everyone saw what went on this week. FPS Lounge, they were the team to beat. In Melee Creeps, they did it without Saya. Ranger just comes in hot off the bench and says, yeah, you know, I'm coach for a reason. That's a really good game on Ivy, Jake. And
so we got to bring back, actually. he can flex that for the rest of his time as a coach. He's like, all right, you know, you guys cause some problems. I'll sub in again. Maybe I'll get this done myself. All right, team.
We got to bring back in ZG, and that was a game.
That was a crazy game. That was such a fun game. That was an even game up to a point, obviously. But crazy even on souls. We're going back and forth on who might be coming ahead in terms of that drafting. And then we just had some pop-off plays by multiple players on Melee Creeps. First, the chat was going crazy about LeJon James. And then, of course, we had the Ido affliction after affliction after affliction. Absolutely redeeming himself for last week's unfortunate Mina game playing his OG character Pocket. Excellent stuff from Melee Creeps. A lot of people happy to see them back in the money match. They were there previously, but with FPS Lounge just being on such a roll and that Victor card, you know, supposing to be the ace up the sleeve, that just actually wasn't the case this time, Jake.
Yeah, it's incredible. They're able to outplay Ido, one of the OGs on Pocket, showing that he's still got it. I mean, we were clowning on him for getting Walker stomped, which I'm going to say I think is fair. I think he's going to have to own that one. But then, I mean, the recovery, right? To come back in and basically every single team fight, he finds the best possible affliction, dominates the game, and they're able to bring it back into control from a mid game that was honestly terrifying, right? FPS Lounge were running them over at you know, like this first 15 minutes. It was rough. Got to also give some props to players like Fishcake and Scout, because they were the ones really on that front line, right? Forced to stand tall and challenge against the threat of Shiv, of Warden, Victor, you know, Mo Krill combo, like so many big problems for them. And I feel like they actually acquitted themselves really nicely in this match, just staying alive.
I mean, everyone got highlighted too. You guys were even highlighting, you know, the Celeste and Ivy, Ranger and Do working well together, and Do even with that really great, you know, big heal and Mirage when one of those urns happened. That was also a pivotal moment in the game. It just like all the players really did show up. But ZP, you know, you were talking about Victor even before the cast, right? Saying that was going to be really important to look at. First loss, by the way, in a while for game picking Victor. But what do you think this is? Was it Melee Creeps and they're drafting to counter Victor? Or was there some execution that went wrong?
I mean, overall, I do wonder a little bit. Like when I was watching some of those FPS Lounge games, I think it was usually low main that was on the Victor. I don't know if there was a difference in comfortability between low main and Snakes playing Victor in this instance. Also, I do think there's a lot to be said for Melee Creeps just playing let's get people on the comfortable heroes. I mean, not that Ido has a bad Mina or anything, but I do think Ido had like a tough last few weeks, and there's no better way to bust, you know, a slump competitively than just going back to the thing you know better than any other hero in the game. And I think per the hours, Ido still probably has a majority of game time on Pocket, and you know, some of these things you don't lose, and oh my word, 78,000 damage, as if the eye test wasn't enough.
Yeah, notably all of the little highlight bars right there, Jake Owen and Melee Creeps, they just, again, all of them played a crucial part in that game.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, what happens when you successfully get away with this sort of like, we've got the better late game and then we execute it, is like, by the time we get to that late game, you kind of already know the game is over. You know, FPS Lounge, it's like they had their chance to win, and it's just, you know, once they can't execute after, I would say, like the 30-minute mark, things start to feel really rough. You think about Rokane, right? He went for that max trap before max flask build, so a slower farming speed, but incredible fighting power much earlier than the other team expects it. And you kind of need that to be not just like winning fights, but you need that to be kind of blowing the game open. You need to be dunking urns, you need to be taking walkers with that kind of a strat. And Melee Creeps, they held the line incredibly well. And it wasn't for FPS Lounge not trying to execute. They were constantly looking for those openings. Melee Creeps just didn't give them any.
Yep, yeah. And who do we think is going to be the player of the match here? I feel like, again, everyone had their highlight moment, but then just so much of the end was indeed Ido. So I'm kind of feeling the Pocket here, ZP.
Yeah, you have to give it to Ido, especially given you know, all the grief that Ido got at the end of last week into the performance here. I mean, if Ido didn't just chain together multiple afflictions one after the other, I'd probably say give it to Ranger for the last moment sub that actually led to a victory. But you can't take it away from someone that had the most damage in the game by far and just repeated domination with affliction. We haven't seen play like this for a Pocket in quite a while, and frankly, I think it caught FPS Lounge a bit off guard.
Yeah, so easy to read, by the way, in the UA. Well done, you guys, to see that. Yeah, 5-man afflictions. Yeah, you just you feel like you don't see that. Then you see it from Ido's point of view, and you see the beautiful, like, all 5 people just going lower and lower in their health. It's such a good feeling. It's such a good look. Pocket absolutely instrumental in this game. You got to figure that looking forward to the best of 3 finals match, Jake, they are not going to let Ido have Pocket.
Yeah, you probably don't want to give it away, but they did grab it second, which honestly is a lot earlier than many other teams have been drafting this hero, and I don't mind it. I think Pocket looks fantastic in competitive play right now with a player like Ido executing on it. It might be something you have to consider threatening with the ban, but remember, there's also Doorman, right? There's other problems in the meta too that you can't just fully focus on Ido. So we'll have to see. I mean, I'm curious what Floorman's approach is. I think Floorman probably also would have expected FPS Lounge to be their opponent in this money match. So even they're going to have to maybe put their heads together and try to figure out how do they take on a resurgent melee creep.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I feel like we've gotten some like rapid fire meta shifts, right? Because we were talking about Victor coming into this week with the other tournament showing us the power. Then suddenly, hey, the people who are also showing the power of Victor, they just got taken down. Victor did not have an impact. So what does that mean? What's been shifting behind the scenes and actually going to be brought out here now that, hey, surprise, it's going to be melee creeps once again facing Floorman, in a rematch of last week. As you can see the bracket here for just a second. There it is, Floorman versus Melee Creeps. That was the match of last week, and that ended in Floorman's favor. But Melee Creeps with a surprise win, perhaps a surprise win against FPS Lounge. Maybe they're just on that roll. Maybe they're going to finally break the curse, CP, and actually even win the money match.
I mean, it would be really funny because the way Melee Creeps was talking about social media, they were calling it the Shopify curse, where, we get a fantastic sponsor, where you're much love the Shopify force coming in the last few weeks, but Melee Creeps wasn't able to win a single week that Shopify was sponsoring the show. So if Melee Creeps comes in and wins today, it actually would just be the funniest thing ever because people are just going to apply a lot of validity to that curse.
That's going to keep on rolling as a storyline, which, just to be clear, would love you back, Shopify. Please, thank you. But maybe Melee Creeps, they just needed the ball rolling a little bit in their favor, and maybe they found it after their win here. Guys, going to go to a really quick break. When we come back, it is the best of 3 money match between Floorman and Melee Creeps, the rematch from last week as well. Don't go anywhere.